Ahoy, me gamies! Give me ye booty, or I'll make ye walk the plank. Today, we are setting sea on Horizon's Gate. Please don't leave. Yeah, Horizon's Gate. Listen, I love pirates, and just the aesthetic of getting a crew together and exploring the ocean. Who knows what's out there to discover? And that's actually why I looked at these games, by the way. Like, yeah, that's the big secret I've been building towards through these videos. I just like pirates. And I know this game was pirate themed, and that's why I wanted to look at these games. Yeah, it's that simple. Pirates! Woo!
Pirate!
But yeah, this is Rad Codic's latest game, and what I consider to be the finale of this tactical trilogy I'm doing. It was released in March of 2020, and I have a lot to say about this game, so no time to waste. Let's set sail. Starting on the title screen, which will change depending on the player's character, I decided to up the difficulty on this playthrough, which may have been a mistake. I should have heeded that the default difficulty was called Veteran for a reason, but I'll get to how that went. As per usual, we start out with character creation. This time the game just says, F it, make one character, the Commodore of our crew. Some of them are locked, but all the familiar races are here, each with their familiar passives, with some receiving some changes, such as Zyla going from 50% chance to poison to now always poisoning melee attackers, alongside a ranged defense buff, or Aphest, who had their movement changed to be +2 in straight lines only, giving them a unique movement grid, which is such a cool idea. I haven't seen a tactical RPG do something like this before. But I don't care about any of this. I'm here for the drip. And honestly, there's some strong new stuff. Like Scurrio's humans and Walderi get full-on pirate hats, Razmin have a bird mask and that's pretty strong, and that's what I'm here for. I wish more races had like pirate hats, bandanas like this. This is what I'm trying to see. Pirates' fashion sense is eternal. But regardless, I decided to go Scurrio for the time to act bonuses, which may have been a mistake, because Scurrio have to be the most common race to recruit. If I had this hindsight, I would have went for Farron, because I did not recruit a single one for this entire game. But yeah, let's begin. We start out on our ship, cruising through a tough storm as you get attacked by a group of pirates, led by someone named Lagan. This serves as one of many tutorials to help explain the game. We get the upper hand until one of our crewmates, Vang, accidentally lets them get away. Well, darn. Then our ship just gets annihilated by lightning like god damn! We wake up shipwrecked, and this is where I'm going to hit y'all with the super tips. I was going wild starting out with this game, because there was something about the text. Something about it just looked blurry and wrong, and it was messing me up, which is ironic coming from me, I know, but something about this game looked off. So check this. See how everything looks? Well, if I change the resolution to 1280 by 720, boom, super zoomed out, way less claustrophobic. This is the way the game was meant to be played. I don't know, there was one screen that made me think different, but this is how I played. Looks way better. Not sure why the game just didn't start me this way. Regardless, we do some more tutorializing and pick up the rest of our crew to survive, just getting to learn the game. Most notably of these survivors is this Falpa named Reeve, who's overpowered as hell, riding through with an in-game class and just beating everybody up. I remember seeing this like, dang, she's going to die, huh? We beat up more of the pirates before seeing our admiral interacting with Lagan, where we find out that Reeve and the Commodore were supposed to be assassinated. We're currently under the Navy for a faction known as Dominio, and this dude, our admiral, he wants us dead for some reason. While exploring this cave, we also end up finding this mysterious sealed door, but it doesn't seem like there's any way we can open it for now. Running into Lagan, we get some more info on why we're being hunted, but he's still rather vague on everything, and before we can get any more answers, we get absolutely blasted by this lightning cannon. Damn! Reeve is slump, and we're next. But luckily, homie Vang comes through with the clutch. That's my dog. And don't worry, Reeve is okay too, but she's just been ultra nerfed to basic beginner class and has also become ultra crusted. Dang. Fang says that there's some empty ships, so let's get out of here. Reeve sticks with us, but the rest of our crew splits up with their own dreams and goals. I never saw these two again, and I don't think the player can, so oh well. Good luck and good golf, y'all. Heading to our ship, we ride out with Reeve, finally entering the world of Eral, free for us to explore and, well, do whatever we want. I mean, ideally we come back with a stronger crew and find out what's behind that door, but for now, adventure ahoy, my gamers! The visuals and music of these games have always been great, and I like all the individual visitable ports, and just the sailing in general. The world feels and looks so lively, with all the ships on their own routes, and plenty of side paths leading to discoverable areas. I'm finally glad that after these past games, I can freely explore and see what the world of Eral is about. I've been waiting for this. So, let's talk about what the player will mostly be experiencing. Ship gameplay. The player is kind of at the mercy of the wind, randomly shifting and either giving a boost to the player or greatly hindering them. Sometimes depending on the wind, it actually causes me to change course. Sailing against the wind is not worth it, and sometimes it really feels like this game is against me. But I'll say the wind makes the sailing gameplay pretty engaging, alongside these wind gusts that will give me a super boost for a short time, so I always gotta pay attention. I'm not idling when I'm sailing, I gotta look. Why does speed matter? Survival mechanics. The bigger my crew, the more food I need to feed everyone, and every day that goes by, a certain number of the food supply is eaten. If I don't have food, my crew's morale gets destroyed, and that crap's always going down. This happens if I become overburdened by carrying too much also. I did this once, and honestly, I don't think my crew morale ever recovered after this. Like, golly gee, y'all, it's not that big of a deal. Please stop getting mad at me! If morale hits 0, the game is over. So be careful about deadlocking into saves with having low morale. This is the kind of game that, with poor play, it's possible to soft lock. But luckily all the autosaves should prevent the player from doing this. I'll explain how morale can be increased, but first, back to the map. So we're on the clock, but it's not real time. Everything including time moves with us, so I can still idle, look at the map, and not have to worry about always being stressed by the time, and I like that. On the map, dark water has monsters that will attack us, and we're definitely not ready for ship battle yet. We can also find fleets of the 3 other nations, where we can talk, trade, or even fight, with consequences to that. The 3 nations that I'm speaking of are Rumain, which is pink, Jace, which is yellow, and Ceratal, which are these assholes. Dominio is also a faction, and while we can see their boats, we can't join them or gain and lose favor with them. It's mostly just Rumain, Ceratal, and Jace. We sail to different ports from these 3 factions, where we can do quests, pledge allegiance, give donations, all to gain favor with that nation. At high enough favor, we get called for special missions by the leader of each faction in the capital. At low enough favor with other factions, we'll get attacked on the spot when encountering their ships on the map. So out of the 3, I originally wanted to ally with Rumain, because something about this guy named Jace coming in, taking over, and naming everything after himself because he thinks he's a god? I mean, I don't know about that. And everyone's just worshipping this dude? And after Voidspire, Ceratal can f*** off. Rumain seemed the most casual. Like, I think they just pray to elemental stones or something, and I can chill with that. The only reason I didn't stick with Rumain is because I high-key didn't have the money to join them. Yeah, the beginning of this game kinda ate me alive. So I did what most people probably did, and stuck with Jace. I mean, I've been trying to meet this guy for 2 games now, so let's not make it 3 games and just join him. And let me tell y'all, I was simping hard for this man. No lie, when I saw him though, it was actually kinda magical. Like, this dude was getting built up for a while, and I don't know, he was kinda cool. Maybe I just got a thing for megalomaniacs. I know y'all are probably wondering what Jace looks like, and yeah, the game is 20 bucks on Steam. Go get it. I don't know who the leaders of Remain or Eral are, but I'm kinda curious. Like, I'd imagine Jin from Voidspire is part of Earal's group, and it'd be cool to see them again. But this playthrough, Eral was my enemy. Take that, suckers! This is for Ekrast! Y'all wouldn't believe my reaction when I interacted with this fleet and found out it was this motherfucker leading it. There was no way I wasn't gonna get that ass by the end of the game. Take notes, I'm stalking. The main reason to work for a faction is to win favor, which can be spent for boons, such as exclusive ships to that faction, money, and escorts. So yeah, I'd say with what I just described, sailing around between ports as a merchant is basically how I spend a majority of my playthrough. Every port is selling a certain trading good, spices, gems, grub husks, waberga. Gossiping with others and paying investigators can help with knowing what sells well in other places. But I never really bothered with any of that crap, and I just did the missions that say bring this here. Like, yeah, okay, makes sense to me. So I wasn't full on role playing as a merchant with a ton of different goods sailing around from post to post. And often I ended up broke, attacking people in full desperation, and that didn't go well either. Please, spare me some food! I played this game so bad at first that I thought I'd have to restart. My IRL morale was low, and I sailed between high highs and low lows. Points I thought I solved the game I had so much money, and points like 5 minutes later where I wonder if I'd ever have the money to do anything anymore. So let me tell you all the hot money tips. Some towns have researchers and cartographers to be hired, but once I got one, I couldn't go to another without losing my current progress, or something like that, so I stuck with the same two for the whole game. Remember looking from the other games? Well, for the unaware, using the look command on objects and characters gives me journal entries about them. Journal entries are now weighted on rarity, and the player is super encouraged to scan anything and everything that they think is interesting. Reef will even let the player know at a certain point that it's time to cash in on what they found. And cash is the word, because this is where the money is at. I've walked into ports starving with no money, go to my researcher, and I come out with thousands. Like, golly gee, what will I do with all this money? And now I'm broke again. I've gotten more money from this than every mission I've done combined. And I like the idea. It makes me feel like an explorer, going around and discovering areas and objects to report on. It rewards the player while also feeding them small bits of lore about the world. I think it's really clever. There's a lot of mechanics at play here which encourage the player to explore this world. The cartographer is another way of getting money, who just pays me for uncovering parts of the map. There's quite a few ways to make money, but also a lot of ways to spend it. There's the obvious stuff like food, items, weapons. There's unlocking classes, which we'll get to that. Every port has a cafe, offering a local specialty, which gives it a temporary buff. And more importantly, raising crew morale, which might be the only way to do that. But then there's also donating to a faction, or investing in individual ports, which will upgrade the items at that port, with most ports having exclusive gear that can be unlocked by investing in them. To even owning a port for myself, where I get all these customization options to decorate things, and get paid for people sailing there. There is a lot here. I think one of the best features here is the note system. I feel like more games with open exploration should have this, as it allows the player to take notes to remind them of places to revisit, which stores and ports have certain items or class trainers, tough dungeons to return to, and generally just notes for the next time I would play. With so much to do in this game, without these notes, I would have gotten lost with all I wanted to accomplish, especially considering my memory is kinda ass. So I made sure to take notes of only the most important things. One thing y'all are gonna hear me say a lot is that I just like pirates. The pirate aesthetic in these open sea exploration games, like maybe I'm tripping, but there doesn't feel like there's a lot of these out there. That was always the cool thing about pirates to me. being on a ship and just sailing around, encountering all sorts of neat and hidden away locations, areas seen by few, learning dark secrets of the world that those landlubbers would never learn about, saying screw these governments and just going around doing my own things. Freedom. The tales and stories I personally come up with by sailing my own way with my own crew. Horizon Gate captures that freedom so well. At game's start, I can do and go wherever I want. Extremely odd side note, but it's what I loved about the space exploration in Cog Dis. Just this large open map of discoverability. This is just something I like in games. I can happily say I probably missed quite a good amount of stuff here in Horizon. It's a large map with a lot to miss and a lot to see. This is exactly the kind of stuff I want from a pirate game. It's not everything, but I don't think there is a game that captures everything I want in a pirate game. Because the idea of ship exploration is so big, it's possible to do so many things with it. And I enjoy what Horizon's Gate chose to do. Even though they really aren't much, I enjoyed the characters here too. Most notably, there's about 3 recruitable characters that are unique. One is of course Reeve. She's here by default, and she gives a lot of dialogue on things and comments when entering areas and eating their food, and she can even comment on journal entries. Her armor also changes color depending on what she's wearing, which is pretty cool. In some ways, she's kind of like the main character to me, and I couldn't imagine not using her. Hager is one of the first recruits, and yeah. He comments on areas and foods as well, and even has combo dialogue with Reeve if she's currently in the party. He almost made a "that's what she said" joke, which nearly got him removed from my party instantly, but yeah. Okay, the last unique member is kinda weird. So I'm just going around, exploring, and I find this Rasman in all black that's just ellipsising me. Which, even though I didn't really want to recruit anyone at the moment, this dialogue was unique from the generic recruit one, and I thought this character trying to be really edgy in all black and not talking was adorable. So, this is Goss. I didn't even know that they were a special character, because they didn't do anything special. However, going to a certain port, a specific single port that happens to be selling cake as a specialty with Goss in the party, and they're like, let's eat here. I want cake. Godlike character. I love them so much. They're also fun as hell. Being a wind mage for me, just running up and blowing people off ships with their wind staff. Golly Goss. By now, I'm sure a lot of y'all are confused, scratching heads, wondering why the hell any of y'all are watching this video. I mean, wondering why I haven't talked about the combat system, right? This game has combat, right? And, yeah, it does. There's definitely a combat system here that is still really fun and cool, but I want to portray the point that for a majority of a player's adventure, what they'll be seeing is this. This isn't the game. This is. Combat happens in very short bursts, sometimes for extended periods, but travel in general takes a long time. Like, it really does feel like a voyage when I travel from one side of the map to the other. It's an odd feeling of returning home from a grand journey to report my findings when I finally run out of money and head back to Jay's, because choosing to go out and explore is going to take several hours. But let's get into the combat. Let's start on foot. Listen, this may be a decently long video, and I don't entirely want to go over what I've already talked about in the previous 2 videos. There's battles. Players earn XP to unlock new classes. They can hold a main class and a subclass. XP is independent per class, with XP being what players spend to buy skills and passives for that class, that they'll keep as long as they're equipped with that class. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the new stuff and changes. Characters' inventories are very small now, and while bags have been reintroduced, I think there's just an infinite inventory that can be held and pulled from the ship's stash. I also appreciate that shift click auto put something into the ship storage. Was looking for something like that. I don't know when this was introduced, but there's a button players can press to speed up the enemy's turn, because on higher difficulties the AI takes time to determine the best situation for their skill level. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know about this enemy speed up button until after I finished the game and I read a workshop mod by the devs explaining the key. So I probably could have saved a lot of time, but maybe it's best for my footage that I kept things slow. Speed up options in games are sort of a slippery slope for me. One new addition I liked was the ability to change the formation of party members pre-combat. Now I no longer need to worry about walking around with my ranged attackers at the front and my melee users in the back, because I could just rearrange my group after the combat is initiated. I was playing on a step above normal for AI, and they were doing some giga smart plays that really showcased the knowledge the creator has of their game. Example being spearing party members with counters from afar to dodge the counter, using shields to push their allies out of my spell range. They did some really cool stuff. And also, no, don't expect me to be able to pull out all this footage in my 30 hours of gameplay. I'm glad the AI doesn't play boring either. They don't do the super optimal thing of just waiting for me to attack like this is some PvP mode. They're hyper aggressive, and that's great. I feel like a lot of TRPGs just have enemy encounters where the game expects the player to just rush in and get shredded, which isn't always fun to force the player to make bad plays just to move on with the game. Fights and quests give XP for classes. Classes have gotten some big changes. A lot of abilities have been split up and put into separate classes, and it feels like a lot of classes have less skills in general. For example, the Mechanist has bombs and turrets in the other games, but here, there's now the Bombardier class and the Mechanist class. The skills got split, but there's some new stuff between them like passives, and some new skills like conveyor belts for the Mechanist. I had fun with some of the new classes though. The Sailor is a good all-arounder, with a shove, a guard, revive, and good movement thanks to swagger. It's a very good class as most of the player's fleet will likely be this class, as it's the default one, and it's kind of made for that environment. Having a shove may seem useless, but pushing people off boats and ringing people out can be huge. Wind magic has gotten quite a lot of love, the Storm Shot being a class with wind and ranged weapon play. The Gladiator is pretty interesting with its passives. These mastery passives are neat, but what really surprised me was this random class having a rather game-changing passive in the form of timed hits. Yes, timed hits in a TRPG. It's the first time I've ever seen this. Really interesting idea. I actually had this on Re for most of the game, but I forgot I had it on her. Like, I thought I took it off, so she basically had 2 passive slots the whole game. Timed hits seemed really strong. I had it on the Commodore too, but I was inconsistent with them. And with so many skills and weapons and distance from opponents resulting in different timings, I never really got the hang of it. It was too hard for me. Funnily enough, they're an unlockable toggle for beating the game. That's fun. The Bard was neat. Definitely gave me some FFT vibes, where I'm kind of mixed on that Bard. They really feel like they don't do anything despite their useful abilities, but players can only explore with 5 party members. And with this class selection, we really gonna spin one on the Bard? Well, yeah, I was Bard bugging to the end game. I think Tactician has to be my favorite new class. Such a cool idea for a class, giving commands and being able to move party members around or giving them extra turns. It actually made me consider which way my party members should face when their turn ends, knowing I can move them around. Super cool class. Also, funny enough, remember how I said I came up with a new class in Alvora with the bow equipped with the healing stones? Well, now that actually is a class in this game, focused on adding healing or debuffing effects to their or ally weapons. It's more versatile than just having a healing bow, but it does take a turn to set up. I'm glad to see that augmenting weapons and armors with certain items to give them bonus effects returns. I really like this feature, and y'all know I built the healing bow again. This shit's like the legendary weapon of Eral to me. Also, the quick switching strat I was using in the first 2 games where I had an inventory full of guns and I could just keep switching them out, yeah, that got nerfed. But I think one of the newer classes has something similar, but like at a bigger cost. But yeah, I'm not going to go into all the classes of this game, for reasons I'll explain later. But let's talk about how to get party members. Cafes are where we can buy the local specialty to increase morale, but there's also usually people here that we can recruit. Depending on the location can change what races show up. Go far out enough and it's possible to encounter some rarer ones. But for me, it was mostly just Scurio, Human, and Razman. Regardless, party members can be assigned to ships, which will be relevant for me like 20 hours later. But they are necessary for being able to pilot multiple ships, and can also run shops and player bought ports. At first I was kind of confused why I would ever use any of these people, but like 20 hours in, I realized that I was playing the game wrong, and the real game were the ship battles. I remember seeing the Steam community tab on this game, and people would be like, here's my drawing of my crew, and it's like a picture of 5 characters. I'm like, what the hell game are y'all playing? This is my crew. And I went through and outfitted all of them. I'll get to ship battles in a bit, I promise. But let me talk about my favorite part of these videos. Just talking about my memorable characters. I think these parts always showcase how creative these games are. So, what better way to start out with than with the main character, which, yeah, I fucked up this character. Dear God, what happened? Let me tell y'all, don't mess up the main character, because there's no way to switch them out, and I wanted to. They were my least favorite character. So it's probably because I was playing on a harder difficulty, but I hard leaned into a meme build, which, yep, it's throwing axes. I don't know if this was always a thing, but throwing weapons count as projectile weapons, so I could mix them with sharpshooter skills and throw multiple axes or axe snipe. Things got more degenerate when I found an ice stone to put on my weapon, and I suddenly started speccing into an ice to boost damage, getting ice adept, carrying around an ice stone just to increase my ice stats so my axes could do like 3 extra damage. I wasted this character. About halfway through the game, I ended up lowering the difficulty. Around the same time, decided to make my main character just a gatekeeper, which I enjoyed for like 5 minutes before the game ended. Pain. So I will say, in typical unique Rad Codex creativity, I was able to use these ice axes to build bridges across water. That's pretty dope. Reeve fared a lot better. In fact, everyone did. But she was a weapon master, having high skill and a ton of different weapons, which using a gladiator passive gave her a huge attack bonus at battle start that basically lasts the whole fight. But she barely attacked. Instead, she had heavy armor and did damage through counters. This is because she was actually a tactician, which I think fits her. Really fun character. I ended it with her starting class, the Kraken Slayer, but I didn't really get to use it much before the game ended. The previously mentioned Hager was an early game sage and mid game healer, also attacking with elemental stones, using a passive that increases their range. Goths was fun and I wish I used them more. Their wind staff did so much damage. Like, these stave weapons are so cool, by the way. This game has a lot of neat weapons that don't follow the rules. But yeah, Goths was fun and made use of my favorite ability, Dash. It's a rogue skill that lets the player dash several steps in a direction, and it's a free action. It does have a lengthy cooldown, but it is a super versatile ability, and it allowed Goths to just run up and full blast people. Great. However, I'd arguably say a character that used it even more is a returning character. Remember my sage sharpshooter from Alvora? Tingle? They're back. Like, yeah, they were just here in the bar like, hey buddy, I see you dyed your fur again. But they aren't a healer no more. Throughout these games, I always slept on daggers, but I wanted to try the rogue out, and that was Tingle, a dagger champ who just ran around poisoning people, had a super dash and could do so much. Their evasion was unmatched. They just dodged everything. I mean, if they get attacked from the back, that's still like 90%, but Damn, they were even dodging my healing bow attacks. But don't worry, they still got healed. Regardless, mid-game, I put a poison augment on their dagger, which essentially made poison tip useless, kind of taking away the gimmick of the rogue class. But the skill version did last longer. But then they became a blade, dual wielding a dancing dagger and a laser dagger, and they melted people. And the long range shockwave attack was amazing. What a blast. Jim? This Razman here? Holy schmaloli. This character was the MVP. Hard carry, broken. See, I was tight that I barely got to use the Blunderbuss and Void Spire. I didn't even find the weapon Alvora. So in Horizon, I needed the Blunder champ. And that was Jim. Jim was basically a sharpshooter for the entire game. The thing about the Blunderbuss weapon is that it shoots in a spread. So combine that with the sharpshooter's multi-shot skill, I could shoot an opponent alongside tiles next to them, hitting them multiple times alongside others. This character could one-shot most enemies and could wipe parties. They relied on Reeve to help move them around due to having the artillery passive, which limited their movement but made their gun attack stronger. They often broke themselves on enemies, usually lasting one turn before going out, but darned they used that one turn well. Shouts to them beating the final boss, by the way, with an unarmed punch. Yeah, Jim took the final fight with a 2 damage unarmed punch. What a legend. At some point I had a Falpa that wielded the legendary healer bow, but eventually they got put back in the crew as a normal bow user, with this Burrock taking over as the healer bard. And I had some others. I had a group B that I switched to at one point to play with for variety. One was this Aphes with this fire ice greatsword, and that was really cool. But as I said earlier, I realized that the gameplay I super vibed with in this game was the pirate fights. Like I said, this was my crew, and I was building all of them. Ship fights kick ass. So here's how they work. Ships have a multitude of different stats and equipable slots. The equipable slots are for different cannons and things like boarding gear to get on others' boats. Ship fights are brutal. If a ship gets destroyed, that's it. It's gone. And these boats are expensive. The thing about ships is that once they fire, their turn is over. There's no fire then move afterwards unless the player has certain cannons, which are often much weaker, and chances are it's not possible to run anyways because the cannons have so much range compared to the movement that ships do. So a lot of the time, the player needs to put their ships out at risk, which makes things exciting. However, the player can also board ships and get their ships boarded. Why do this? Because if everyone is defeated on their ship, that ship is unusable. And for me, it can be captured. So these fights are often sacrificing ships to obtain new ones, making profit from selling old ones. Like I often used Grape Shot, which focuses more on dealing damage to the crew members than damage to the actual ship. And then I start invading with my crew when the enemy's weak. It's like a different game. Time is limited before I'm kicked off, and ring outs are deadly, space is short. This part of the game was so hype. I only started doing this like probably 25 hours into the game. The amazing thing about Horizon Gate is that whenever I got bored, like, alright, I just want to finish the game now, there'd always be something new to do and pull me back in. I think my favorite parts were just me stumbling across some area, and it turns out to be this whole dungeon. That's something I really miss from Void Spire, going on these small adventures into places and discovering things. Dungeon crawling was surprisingly rare for me in this game. I mean, once again, for me, maybe I did miss a lot. I wish I found more areas like these, because most of the time, I just find these randomized Alvora-ass groves that are just one fight and then a bonus treasure. This is where most of the players' fights will take place, and even then it can be scarce with finding these on the world map as they're randomly placed. I want to be able to use these skills. I want to be able to level. I think it's time I go into my issues with this game, because I've been holding back, and as always, my opinions don't make the game bad, and sometimes what I say are just simple observations. There's just stuff that I don't agree with. Open world games are hard to make, and I just have some mixed thoughts on this one. I feel like this game wanted me to play a lot more, but I wasn't really sure what I should do. With most of the game just being ship travel, I longed for moments where I could just chill in dungeon. Y'all know why I never got to talking about all the classes? Multiple reasons, but one is that I just wasn't getting a lot of XP. Fights were rare, and anything that wasn't a pirate battle or normal fights gave pretty paltry amounts. A part of me wants to recommend making the starting character a human or something. I was buying these XP giving essence stones just to help me speed up. And the times where there is a drought in fighting, because I have to screw around with quests and regain my money, I feel like I'm making no progress with my characters. Something about that pacing just feels off. This really sucks for my crew members who start off as sailors and I have to build and dedicate XP to them. Though for some reason, some classes were unlocked for everyone. And the game never told me why this happens, and I'm not sure what causes this. But the other reason I didn't show off all the classes is because of trainers. Dear God. I understand the point of this mechanic. See these rows of classes? All locked, and I'm not talking XP locked. Well, they're XP locked too. But the idea is that I have to go around to ports to find these specialized NPCs known as trainers, pay them money, and get the ability to use that class. This is supposed to encourage the player to explore, but it just led to me getting stuck at classes more. It's so demoralizing when I buy a new class, only to find out that in order to unlock it on a character, I need to earn XP in another class that's locked and requires a trainer. I can't even use this class now, and I have no clue where I need to go to find the trainer for it. Which means I'm not gaining XP to get the class, which means I'm not unlocking classes. I'm just stuck in a class, and that's why I can't tell you all about all these classes. I'll say I don't mind the game not labeling which teachers are where. I think a lack of information is important in keeping things realistic, in the sense of encouraging me to write notes reminding me on what certain ports have. I like that. And I do think that this is okay for a first time playthrough. But I don't know, if I'm doing like a modded replay through or anything, do I really want to deal with these unfun limiters? This is one of the most popular mods for a reason. I feel like there was an idea of freedom, of being able to be a pirate or be a merchant, play how ye want. But ultimately, the end goal involves becoming strong and doing fights. So a merchant playstyle seems kind of odd with the game constantly building out this idea that we need to get revenge on these pirates. And it doesn't feel like these playstyles really mesh in the way that there's a ton of ways to become strong. Screwing around with merchant stuff isn't really leveling me up. I could have a fleet of merchant ships piloted by a small crew, where I don't need to worry as much about food and I have all sorts of trade items. Get paid, get laid, lemonade. I am a merchant main in Fortune Treat Sphere mode, I know the biz. But what the hell are my traders going to do against the ship fight? Rely on the AI escorts? The goal of this game isn't finding a way to get a certain amount of money, it's becoming strong enough to beat up the beginning pirates in the final dungeon. This fight the pirates plot is kind of annoying because that's all there really feels like there's happening in the world. There's these 3 factions, but they're all cool with each other, but if I start attacking other faction ships, I gain favor towards my current faction. What if there were factions starting to take over other ports? What if there was a threat of pirates taking things over? It just feels so still. In-game time said I played for 500 days, but there was nothing going on in the world. The factions just didn't feel interesting to me. Like there were points where being a high rank gave me a special mission acknowledging my rank, but it was just fighting a bunch of strong monsters. I didn't expect anything like exclusive quest lines with an overarching plot for each faction, but from what I experienced, Jace just wanted me to grab random items and discover spots on the map, which is wild. Like when I was given this Fin Left mission, I spent forever trying to find this place. I didn't realize it could be an area already revealed on my map, which is another weird thing, that I can only carry one quest at a time. which unless I'm delivering letters, which give pathetic money and potentially negative profit, I'm just going to a port, grabbing items, and then running back to where I got the quest. Countless fetch quests. I wasn't learning anything about these people of Jace and their views through their quests. It just felt generic. I assume all factions give pretty similar quests. I just wish I had an impact on this world. I wish there was flavor, in the sense that every quest giver and bard member wouldn't just toss the same dialogue lines at me every time. Some of this just reads so odd. It reminds me that I'm playing a video game, rather than actually being there with these characters going on fun sailing adventures. Instead, I'm just number crunching. There's no intrigue or story, it's just go out, get strong, head back to these pirates and kill them. I'm not saying there needs to be a super deep story and world, but I feel like most of the interest in this world, for me, was learning about it in the previous games. Don't get me wrong, there's tons of lore snippets, that's the point of looking at things, and I love it. But when it comes to conflict and the people in it, like, I don't know, every port starts feeling like the same place. And the three factions are just three colorful symbols that don't have a lot to differentiate themselves with. Like, yeah, I'm sure Reeve cares about this whole revenge plot of finding out what's behind the door and beating up the pirates, but I'd rather do other things. But then I found out that there's not really much else for other things when it comes to story. So I'm like, yeah, F it, the Admiral has more character than any of these guys do, so darn. I know some of y'all want to say that this is an indie game made by like one person, and yeah, I guess, but I don't care. I don't belittle indie games like that. I rate all games on the same scale, and I enjoyed this game over a lot of games that were made by studios full of people. Just keep that in mind when I say these things. I feel like as free as this game says it is, I can't help but think without knowledge on much, most players are just going to spend a lot of the time just fetch questing. Like, hey, there's a combat system in this game, but unless I get monster den quests, I'm stuck recharging my food battery via back and forth questing. These two gameplay styles feel so disconnected, which is a shame because there's so much cool stuff to the combat. I hate to compare. In some ways it feels like they took Voidspire and stretched it. Classes take forever to get, through both unlocking and XP. Some classes have been downgraded and split up, making it just take longer to reach later classes. Time between combat sections is stretched. There's so much to do in this game, but it doesn't feel like there's enough to be able to do it. Like, spending money on buying my own port costs so much. There was no way I had time to do it in this playthrough. Because what was I going to do to get that money? Just keep fetch questing? I couldn't find much else. Or upgrading ports? First I had to spend money on researchers just so they can tell me to fuck off for a week just so I can see what the upgraded ports will give me. And then I have to dump thousands of coin into them just to unlock even more expensive items. Like, why do I bother with any of this when I should just be raising money to get a crew and then going to beat the game? Yeah, there were areas with strong enemies I never ended up beating, but where was I supposed to get that XP? And dear lord, the sound effect that the game makes when completing a quest is so loud. Like, I tried lowering the sound effects and it still blows my head off, but that's just a nitpick. This game has mod support, which I'm really glad it does. And shoutouts to Rad Codex for making a game with workshops and mods being able to be added. Love it. I feel like looking at the most popular mods for games can give an indication on what others believe they would have liked to see in this game. And there's a suspicious amount of mods in Horizon's Gate that add content to the mid-level of this game. Because times when I wanted to stop screwing around and just finish the game, it was because I didn't know what else to do. Anything high level was impossible for me, and I felt like I cleared all the mid and low level stuff that was interesting and gave good enough XP. I felt like I was trying to climb a ladder, but the next few rungs were missing, and I just couldn't reach to the next one that was there. So what do? Risk wasting tons of money and food trying to find something out there? Or just continue bouncing back between ports, waiting to get enough money so I could have fun again? Getting into combat, there's some odd choices I don't really agree with. In the other games, everyone got placed on the timeline bar fairly, But here, enemies go first every single time. Then my group, then the enemy's group. It's no longer a mix of ups and downs of enemies and allies going. It's less dynamic. It was just, here, my enemies all go and destroy me, then my group goes and destroys my enemies. Every fight was either me stomping or getting stomped on, morale super high or low. That's just an observation, and a personal preference I'm not about. I know there's TRPGs out here that do this, it's not uncommon. But I preferred when everyone was fairly put on the timeline. Like, what's so special about Scurio now? In the other games, they would be the first at the start of combat. They were ahead of everyone. Now they're just the first of my group after my enemies attack me. And that's when things get criminal. Enemies always going first at the start of battle, side ship fights, is toxic. Bad. I don't like this at all. Look at this encounter. Arachnophobia warning, by the way. When I say Kakrismo, feel free to look back at the screen. Okay, so look at this fight. I walk in, and the fight begins. This happens. Now it's my turn. Like, that's demoralizing. I didn't even get a chance to fight or come up with a clever strategy. And my Reeve was that super armor that had limited movement but made her super defensive, and we still get stomped. I don't think this fight was winnable unless I do some sort of bombardier pre-fight setup. Kakrismo! And sure, with some classes I might be able to do some cheese to attack enemies before the fight begins, but is this how I'm supposed to play the game? Setting down mega bombs in anticipation of the final boss was a cool strategy I did, but am I supposed to do that for every encounter? Maybe the advantage is that players can first strike to initiate combat, but that's class specific, and I tried often with my sharpshooter, but it often failed, and it didn't deal nearly as much damage as the enemies did to me on the first combat turn. And for scripted encounters, I couldn't even attack first if I wanted to. That's not fair. This probably encourages my thoughts on ship battles being the fun way to play the game. There, I go first, and while still kinda unbalanced, whoever boards their opponent's ships get to go first. So at least if I get punished for my movements, it feels like it's my fault, rather than the game just making me take force damage before my characters are even actionable. This really sucks because while the formation system is great, it's weird that the formation setups are random, like the shapes I get to place my characters in, which blows on encounters where I get first attacked by enemies with area attacks. I can't even spread my party members out if I wanted to, just like in that spider example. Like, I want to use mages and defensively weak backliners, but if my first turn is watching them get killed instantly by some spell or attack, then what's the point? I should just go all warriors. I'll state that these are specific cases at points, and often I don't take damage on first turns. In fact, most of the time, having the enemy go first so that they could move closer to me was nice, but I can't see anything wrong with how it was before. I can see some of these negative points being a bit much, and I can understand that there's an encouragement to replaying the game. I'm not supposed to see everything, I'm not supposed to unlock all classes and all that. I get it. I don't know if this is surprising after all I said, but I really like this game. The fact I'm pointing out some things that I didn't gel with isn't for hatred, it's because I'm so passionate about a game I really liked. The fact that so many of my complaints was wishing that they would add more is proof of that. This game has so much potential, and what's already here is amazing. This is the pirate stuff that I live for. My play sessions were long, I was engaged even though most of the footage looked like this. I was honestly having a blast and it was just this. Like, do y'all think I'm bored of this game? I'm holding myself back from replaying it. In fact, I'm holding myself from replaying it twice. Coming into this game with knowledge and a new playstyle idea sounds great. I want to do it. In the modding scene, even Rad Codex made mods to help with speeding the game up. They want people to replay it. There's so many good mods. Stuff like new areas, dungeons, classes, drip, race reworks, which I'm pretty interested in. It's great. Hell, There's a mod that randomly shuffles skills between classes. That's worth a playthrough on its own. I threw a bunch of these mods on and pressed the class key and wow. Just look at this. Endless possibilities. If I had the time, I'd really want to replay this game with all this new and fun stuff. But I think it's clear from what I'm saying that I just enjoy this game in general. I love this game. It does everything I wanted it to do, and everything I was hoping it would do. Yeah, not everything follows specifically to what I would have enjoyed, and I wish there was more to do. But honestly, isn't wishing for more of the game one of the better things that can be said about it? And shoot, that's what mods are for, right? I didn't want to retread ground by saying what I said in the previous videos, but it's still rad codecs. These games are creative as hell and fun. I don't know what people want in strategy RPGs, like the deep tactical nature of them, but maybe the thing that I should think about when I play strategy RPGs is just how fun and creative they potentially can be, and the openness of all these different strategies. That's what makes these games shine, and honestly, I think other TRPGs should step up to this kind of quality, but not every game needs to be made the same way. But what's here is what I like in a TRPG. It made me realize things about TRPGs I didn't even know. Cause I came into this like I was pretty moderate on TRPGs, but I found a new appreciation for TRPGs by playing this game. Like shoot, if I'm gonna play through a tactical RPG, these are top on the priority for me. If I'm gonna recommend anything to anyone, yeah, it's these. And I've gained an appreciation for the world too. Seeing Rad Codex writing in their feature section, always talking about their unique races, and not just reusing typical elves, dwarves, and the like. And it does help this world stick out. These races and characters are all so cool. I love seeing games with interconnected worlds like this. This game has a lot of fan service with returning characters and locations and wait a second. This is the starting area from Voidspire. Does that mean? What? No! Livia! She was an OG! Okay, I'm over it. I'm surprised I didn't find Morin in this game. They have to be somewhere, I'm sure. It's Morin. But yeah, despite my problems with this game, I loved it. Straight up the most out of these three games. And to return to my idea from the original video, I feel like I don't even need to explain my point on each of these games being their own unique individual experience. These games are completely different from one another, and I enjoy them each in their own way. Voidspire's traditional and personal 4-party adventure through a small area arguably has the best story out of these games. Alvora being this roguelike game with some neat ideas which further expand on player creativity. In Horizon's Gate, this large open pirate exploration adventure. God, I love pirates. Sea exploration. And this is high tier on pirate games for me. Like maybe I need to play more. I've looked several times. Y'all gotta give me some recommendations. But this game captures that open, high spirit freedom of going wherever I want. It's a big world with cool things to find. It rules. I was looking into the single developer behind Rad Codex, Sean Hayden, and golly gee what a gamer they are, participating in game jams and still working on new games to this day. Nice. So yeah, that's Horizon's Gate, and the end of these tactics games for me. I had a great time playing through them all. I recommend y'all to just snatch that bundle and play all three, or choose the one that's the most appealing. I'm probably not going to be able to stop myself from replaying Horizon a few more times when I get the spare time. And honestly, maybe through these replay throughs I might even find more appreciation for it, because I think it's a game that gets better on multiple playthroughs. Great stuff though. Links in the description, like always. Check this stuff out, baby. But I think it's time I get out of here. The sea calls. So, until then, I'll catch y'all later.